Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. Sorry for starting a little bit late. My name is Robin Wouters from Tech.eu, and I will be joined here very shortly by Tim Schumacher. He's a serial entrepreneur and investor, and he just became the managing general partner at World Fund, which is Europe's biggest climate tech VC fund. So I'm very, very excited about this conversation. I hope you are too. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. We hopefully have Tim joining us now.
Hello,
And
hey, good morning.
And there he is. Welcome, Tim. It's been quite a while since we've seen each other in person, unfortunately, obviously
Absolutely.
because of the pandemic. But yeah, good to see you again. How have you been?
Good, good. Yeah, busy time, but yeah, definitely missing the conferences and seeing people. Although it's kind of starting again a bit. So
It is. And I have my fingers crossed for the Pirate Summit as well, because we usually meet there in Cologne, of course.
that's a highlight every year.
It is, absolutely. Again, to everyone watching, sorry for the slight delay, a bit of technical issues, but hopefully everything is working now. For those people who don't know, because your career spans a little over 20 years already when you started Sedo, I think.
Don't
So
say that. That
maybe.
makes me feel old. But yeah, it's
And
right.
well, the funny thing is, my first job was in the domain name industry, so I actually got to know Sato and you very early in my career. So we're both veterans at this point, so that's fine. So maybe for those who don't know, can you explain a little bit about your background before we jump into sort of the present activities?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So yeah, I was kind of a computer kid. I would say. Then started programming as a teenager. Do some software projects. And then after university, started a company called Cedo, the one you just mentioned, a domain marketplace. And that company I ran as the founder and CEO for over 10 years, starting three friends in a garage. Then growing. I moved to the U.S. to Boston, lived in Boston, Massachusetts for 3 years. Came back, took the company public, through today we would say a SPAC. Back then it was more like a basically our majority shareholder, they had an empty shell lying around, so we just kind of used that. And then we were public for a couple of years, and I then sold the company ultimately when we had about 400 people and 130 million in revenue. And then in 2012, after I exited, decided I want to go back into kind of more entrepreneurial things, and started very hands-on investing in both software on the one side and climate tech, or also a lot of climate software stuff on the other side. And during that time, one of the projects, Robin, I think, where you came visit us in I think even our first or second year of existence was the ad blocker, AdBlock Plus. That's now a nice company of over 200 people, and the world's largest ad blocker. And also during that time, I invested into Ecosia, which is now the largest independent search engine in Europe. And actually one of the largest tree planting organizations in the world as well. So we're a search engine, but we take the money. Now it's a nonprofit. We take the money completely and put it into tree planting projects all over the world to battle
Yeah,
climate change. And
yeah, we're
around
gonna
that,
go.
like a dozen other like climate investments, uh, in multiple spaces, and that I want to leverage now with the World Fund. So kind of one thing leads to the next thing.
Yeah, so that's already 20 years in a nutshell. But I
That's
want to go
20 years.
back to sort of. Yeah, so I want to go back to the time when you sort of exited Sato and you started making investments. What was the reason that you didn't want to start like another big company, or how did you end up becoming an angel investor? Because I assume that's also something you sort of have to learn while you're doing it, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I learned investing over the last 10 years as an angel investor with my own money, and leveraging that now with the fund. And I did kind of work hands on some of the businesses, like the ad blocking business. The first couple of years, yeah, technically I was the angel investor, but also I've been super hands on there, and literally kind of co-founding that with the original developer and with Till, who we also know well. And on Ecosia, same thing. I've worked quite hands on never full time, but very hands on in product, in negotiations with the big providers, in helping them with marketing, with scaling an organization, and that's what I've also learned over the years is that no matter what kind of companies, the issues are always the same. Like starting from an idea to growing the team over time is like you have the same bottlenecks, the same issues, and so I try to be helpful and a good sparings partner to the entrepreneurs, and because I've been through many of those cases, usually I can be helpful to them.
Yeah, yeah, great. And I remember when you started, or you started getting involved in Ecosia. I think it was about 8 years ago, around the same time that Tech.eu
Right.
started, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's relatively early, I would say, to get sort of an interest in climate tech. Investment and ventures, and I remember thinking, and don't hate me for this, but I remember thinking that this is a very cute project, but it doesn't seem like a really big,
Yeah.
ambitious company or a venture, not at least in comparison to what you did before. But I've been proved wrong. So I want to hear from you, sort of your perspective on Ecosia and why you got involved in the first place.
Yeah, you're totally right, and you're not alone. Like a lot of people thought that. I sometimes even told people in the beginning is like this. This sounds like a very cute, esoteric little project, but we have big ambitions, and this is why. And then usually people understood, and the why is very simple. Is I got involved there because I felt you have one thing on the web which is insanely profitable, and that's search. And also search doesn't have a lot of network effects. Like it's hard to create, let's say, a second Facebook. It's also hard to create like another Amazon with all the logistics and everything you need. But search is yes, there is a USP Google has on the technology side, but also um, Google has obviously a lot of issues, whether it's privacy issues, it's their abuse of monopolistic positions, it's just generally the fact that people don't want any corporation like that to just suck out the profits of entire ecosystems, with people just kind of bidding up the money and then going to a monopolist. Also, kind of with some tax practices, like most of the large companies. I mean, Google's not alone there, but so I think overall we said, hey, let's take this most profitable thing of the web and do something meaningful with it. And trees are so important. Trees are kind of at the moment the single biggest uh, simple things, I would say, to stop climate change. We should do all the other ones, all the other things as well. We need to reduce consumption. We need to get away from fossil fuels. We need to decarbonize the energy system. We need to change our food habits, and so on and so forth. The list is long, and it doesn't need just one solution. It needs multiple solutions. But trees is one thing which is actually fairly easy. Like it's much less work than all the and much less cost than all the other things. And so we said, let's start with this and take all the money from this part and put it into what is needed the most. And I think people understood that.
That's great, and I see you're also surrounded by trees now, so that's nice.
Yeah. That's by the way, just this is
The
real. So
backdrop. Oh,
it's
this is
not a
real.
not a Windows, not a Zoom fake screen or something. It's actually we have that in the office. I can recommend it. It's noise cancellation
Oh wow.
pictures. So you can
Wow.
basically put any picture on this then on noise cancellation membran, and then
Great.
yeah, you get a nice picture, but also with good acoustics.
I should try that. Thanks
Yeah.
for the recommendation. So I'm guessing that is also how you got sort of more involved in climate decarbonization. I bet you learned a lot just by
I learned a lot. Yeah.
studying this tree thing. And is that also what led to you becoming a general partner at the World Fund? Because if I get this correctly, the fund was actually initiated by Ecosia, the company or the nonprofit.
Yeah, that is correct. So Ecosia was a core initiator, also is a core LP of ours, and helped kickstart this. And Christian, the founder of Ecosia, is one of our venture partners. Now it's kind of an independent team running it, and we're also independent of Ecosia, but Ecosia was crucial, and we still rely on Ecosia on a lot of things, including their knowledge about trees and forestry and agriculture, where they have built up some vast resources over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Great. So let's talk about the World Fund. This is actually the main topic of today. Very recently announced the 350 million euro fund, which is Europe's largest climate tech focused fund. I would guess. It's also has it been announced, but it's also not necessarily new because I remember 4 or 5 years ago you could sort of already see this impact VC sustainability focused, future positive, 2150, pale blue dot. So obviously you're not the first to sort of dedicate a fund solely to climate tech. But how do you plan to differentiate? I mean, in terms of size, it's already quite notable. But what else is special about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And generally, the more the merrier. I mean, we don't just need one climate; we need multiple ones. And some of the ones you mentioned, we think very highly of, and we work well. Like Pale Blue Dot is a good example. 2150. They all have kind of great theses as well. And so I think this is. It's just like there's not one internet fund, and decarbonization is a much bigger challenge, also a much bigger opportunity, because it encompasses so many parts of our life that I think there should be dozens of world funds, if not hundreds, to make this happen. And it's happening. I mean, and of course, we all need to have a bit of a differentiator. As always, I think the people play a big role. Daria, my founding partner, she's been great. Great VC in the European and especially German ecosystem over the last couple of years. One best investor 2020, the German Startup Association as an example, best VC investor, and Craig Douglas, founding partner as well at the World Fund. He's been co-running Set Ventures in Amsterdam for many years, over 10 years actually, climate tech experience, lots of knowledge on ESG and impact, and Daniel, his background is more from journalism, and worked for Angela Merkel for many years, and for Project A, also a great fund in Berlin.
Yeah.
And so he brings the communication angle, and I don't have to tell you how important communications is, and actually making sure that the voice is heard outside. And so he's a real climate influencer by now. And so it's really, I think, the team first and foremost, a strong diverse team of different backgrounds, different people, which makes us strong. But then it's also the network we've built around that, with a lot of like advisors and scientists, lots of great LPs. We have a lot of, like, we have over 100 LPs now, investors, some like really great climate entrepreneurs as well, like the founders of Next Kraftwerke, for example, here in Cologne, or Verena Pauster and her husband, also founded a climate tech company. Uh, Multiple great founders, and so it's also something we want to tap into. And there's Ecosia. I think Ecosia also has a positive influence on us. We've got like a billion search requests a month, so it's really good to have them as a backing, and it gives us credibility, but also there are a lot of people who are using it. So I think lots of ingredients. I think we can differentiate
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah, you definitely assembled a great team of people. I like that you work with scientists and experts also for due diligence and just general advice on the fund. I'm sure that helped you raise the 350 million euros, but it can't be the only thing. So, what was the sort of the from your perspective the process like talking to LPs? Were they open to the idea of another climate tech fund? Were they quick in making a decision to deploy the capital? Can you walk us through what happened?
So generally, I was positively surprised by the uptake in the market. Most people we talked to actually were interested, and as always, some people take longer and really want to see a lot of documents. Other people trust their gut feeling, and they've seen that we've done a lot of things right in other companies, and they commit after a 10-minute call. I've had everything. Um, we haven't, by the way, I have to say this. With the 350 is our target goal. We have about half of it soft committed by now, and a portion of that hard committed. So we're about halfway, and we're still open. But yeah, generally the reception has been really good. Given that we just started fundraising a couple of months ago, it definitely surpassed all of our expectations.
Great. I had the pleasure of interviewing Chris Saka, who of course just raised 800 million funds to do climate tech sustainability related investments across the world. Um, it was a tech barbecue. He told me in September that this is going to unlock trillions and trillions of value. It's going to be a lot bigger than the internet, which you already alluded to as well. Um, but I think the difficulty here, at least from my perspective, is identifying sort of you know the signal from the noise, if that makes sense, because I was at Web Summit in Lisbon 2 weeks ago. There's so many sustainability related and impact.
Yeah.
I find it very difficult to sort of pinpoint and identify the ones that are really going to be big or have an impact.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that in terms of like deal flow and
Yeah.
just like identifying?
I, I mean, I would say it's always the case. I mean, you look at internet, any category, whether that's SaaS or AI or something, you also have thousands of startups trying to compete and trying to pick the ones which are the winners. It's hard in every industry, and climate is no different. Climate is just a bit newer as a category, and I think it's been growing fast in the last year or two, and it's good because a lot of founders say, hey, um, I've either had a career somewhere else, or I really just like, especially young entrepreneurs who are fresh out of college. They're like, okay, if I can decide whether I join an internet company now or I join a climate tech company, and I'm going for climate tech because I want to devote my career into something that really matters. And so we're seeing a lot more great founders there. Then at the end of the day, it is about the people. I mean, we try to find, are they good? Are they smart? Are they passionate about the topic? Uh, and so I think we do the same analysis in any other VC when it comes to the team, the traction, what they've accomplished, the product. There's one additional thing, and that we're really proud of how we developed that with the World Fund, is we really look at the carbon the carbon impact or the climate return, as we put it. So we're looking for projects, for companies that have a potential of saving or capturing over 100 megatons in CO2 or CO2 equivalents. And that is often the hard part to find out where this is. It's a little bit like the what is the total addressable market in a classic in a classic business. And that part is hard, but it's also really important because we can differentiate the projects which are just kind of, they look nice on the surface, but they don't move the needle, from the ones which really move the needle. And those are the ones we're trying to find. So we're building those climate potential analysis also together with the company, but good companies should at least have an idea of what their impact is. And then that's also core of our hypothesis. Our hypothesis is that climate return is a predictor for financial return. Is that's a real indicator that if you can save CO2 with CO2 prices rising and more and more companies pledging carbon neutral and customers wanting carbon neutral products, that's going to be a currency which will pay off later. If you decarbonize now. And so that's one of the core metrics we look at. And we think that will also have a positive impact on our financial return in the long run.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It did raise the question for me because I read in the documentation, of course, this metric is very important to you. But I do find if your scope is that wide, you invest sort of in the food economy, agriculture, renewable energy. I find that some of these sectors are going to have an easier time sort of decarbonizing or at least quantifying what they are going to be able to achieve than others. So Isn't it difficult to sort of compare a agriculture or AG tech company compared to someone who's like in solar, for example?
Absolutely. I mean, it is something where we need to look at multiple sectors, and in some it's harder than in others. But at the same time, I mean, we have good advisors and also good LPs and good investment managers on our team in all those sectors. And then often we also work together with the specialized funds. So, for example, we did one investment or two investments in food, and in both cases we work together also with special food investors who helped us on that. So that's usually something which is quite doable.
Great. So, what are the relationships that you have currently with the other climate tech funds? I assume there's still relatively few of you, so I assume that you scout for co-investments together. My main question is why the focus on Europe only? Because of course it's a global problem, and there are funds popping up all over the world. Most of them focus on not one territory, but more of a sector focus or a stage focus. Why this dedication to Europe?
A couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, we will do some investments outside of Europe as well, but we'll probably do like 80% in Europe. I mean, one reason is Europe has like one third of the research institutes in that field and has one third of all climate tech patents, and yet we have much less, so less than 10% of venture money. So there is a gap, and we feel that that gap is better filled in Europe than in other countries. A second reason is that I mean we are Europeans, the European team, and you tend to get better access to deals. You have a better network in your home turf than in other countries. Exception is the rule. Sometimes it happens. I mean, like I get a lot of deals from the US, and but most of the time, if they haven't found an investor there, then you kind of as an outside investor you get what is left over. Exception is the rule. Like I, for example, Pachama is an example. A good friend of mine. He he very early introduced me to Pachama.com, and I invested there, and that of course was a fantastic investment because a bit later Bezos and Bill Gates came in, and the company is on a great path now. But really, that's more the exception than the rule, because most of the times it's like if you're good in the US, you'll usually get your first investors there, unless you have something real, like we have something really specific, and Ecosia sometimes can be that, where we really have an edge. But in many other cases, I think most investors are smart to kind of start first and then venture out into the world.
Yeah, I can hear some feedback from microphone, so I don't know what's
Okay.
going on if the audience can hear it. But so I have a sort of a closing question because we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. But um, what was for you the main conclusion from the COP26 climate conference? Because of course we've all been watching sort of the news coming out of Glasgow in the last few weeks. You've been watching very closely, I'm sure. What are your main takeaways, and does it affect the way that you're going to run the World Fund?
Well, good question. I mean, I would have hoped for more, of course. I think, like most people who are active in that field, I don't think it'll change the way we run things. As I said earlier, I think the truth is that we will need to act, and hopefully sooner rather than later, also politics will act. And things, for example, like the CO2 price are very, very important, because if there's a decent CO2 price, everything else would be kind of sorted out then by smart entrepreneurs all over the world who would create the technologies and the products and the businesses to save CO2. I mean, unfortunately, the progress made was too little. I mean, there are some things which made me hopeful that there actually is some progress. But overall, I mean, I think we continue to do what we do, and the good thing is also, I think there's a lot of pressure coming from consumers, from companies, also from employees. By the way, I mean, if for example, if we have the same position at Ecosia versus at one of the software companies, we get like so many more applications for Ecosia. It's amazing, like how people really want to work and want to contribute to that, and all of those are are factors in the long run which businesses will not be able to deny. And so there is a reason that more and more money is flowing into that sector. So politics is needed, but so are individual consumer and company preferences.
Definitely. Maybe final question, because it's also related to COP26. One of the people who was there was Lubomila from Plan A, great green tech company that just raised a $10 million round as well from Berlin. She was there. She said she was one of the very few startups and innovators there as well, which is also a shame. I think startups and investors should be a bit more closer to that kind of thing. But that's separate from what I wanted to ask. What I wanted to ask is that she's very adamant about stopping the greenwashing that a lot of the companies are into. If you look at that from your perspective, meeting with lots of innovators and investors in this space, how do you perceive this greenwashing aspect of what corporates are doing, and is it easy for you to see through it?
And I agree with her. That's something which should be called out, and there needs to be more measurements, more transparency, also firm standards on certain things. And for us, it is an important part to see through that. And for example, through this climate potential analysis, which I alluded to earlier, to really find out what are the real savings of the technology, because some things look good. And a lot of startups also pitch this greenwashing in startups as well. They try to look sustainable, but then once you look a little closer, you see that they try to greenwash to find investors. And of course, we need to. It's part of our job to look through that and see what are the real game-changing technologies, and those are the ones we want to invest in with the World Fund.
Great. And again, I think it's great that you've assembled sort of a team of scientists and experts around you to help you guide that, because I think that's very much needed as well. Tim, that's all the time that we had. Thank you so much for spending your time with us and the audience to talk more about the World Fund. Looking forward to seeing which investments you make and how impactful they end up being. But thanks again for joining. Sorry for running a bit late in the beginning. And I'll hopefully see you in person very soon.
Cool. Let's do that. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye, everyone.